Good day, guys. Kirill here. We're continuing with our review lessons, Course in Miracles review lessons. And today we are reviewing lesson 86 that covers lessons 70 and 71. And without further ado, let me share the screen. Okay. All right, so let's start. And so let's read and discuss lessons a little bit. So lesson 70. Only God's plan for salvation will work. It is senseless for me to search about wildly about for salvation. I have seen it in many people and in many things, but when I reached for it, it was not there. I was mistaken about where it is. I was mistaken about what it is. I will undertake no more idle seeking. Only God's plan for salvation will work, and I will rejoice because His plan can never fail. And so, yeah, so let's leave the suggested forms for a little bit later, and let's dive deep into what it actually says. And so, the title of the lesson that only God's plan for salvation will work, and essentially, yeah, once again, so the Course tries to bring to our attention that everything that we tried on our own has actually failed. We never really found happiness that we're looking for. We never really found this peace and joy, these very basic things that we think, oh, if I only will have this new car or new house. I think I'm repeating it every single review lesson, but that's my breed of what we're talking about. Now, so let's start with this. It is senseless for me to search wildly about for salvation. I have seen it in many people, in many things, but it was not there. I guess what is important for me there, what I read in this, so it took me a really, really, really a long time to accept the idea, at least in even in basic form, because I was first of all, I was extremely scared of what it had to say, like because it says very clearly that everything that we're striving for, career, money, I don't know, partner, kids, education, uh, vacation, pension, uh, you name it, is not what will bring us happiness. Essentially, this is what it says. And for me, for a long time, it was quite difficult to accept it. Somehow, yeah, it was just hard. It was just I. It's not that it was hard. I just rejected it on the basis that I would rather prefer to be a productive citizen, a good son, good husband, good employee, good colleague, good friend, and good driver on the road, uh, good taxpayer, you name it, doesn't matter. Good brother, yeah. And yeah, just to accept that all those things that we're striving for, this promotion, this new car, this new date, this new whatever, this new house, this new investment, this new, I don't know, pile of money, it's just not going to bring the happiness that I'm looking for. So essentially, it worked like that. So I would pick up a new idea somewhere. Basically, it's from some kind of marketing or some conversation with someone that I would pick up some new idea that, oh, that thing, I don't know, when I lived in Moscow, it was like my own apartment, or it was that promotion at work. It was extremely important for me. And because it was important, it's like, no, it works slightly differently. So I was looking for something to be important in my life, very important. And I would be very picky what to assign a important label in my life. But then when I assigned it, I would really invest into that. So, for example, career and to have an apartment, to the renovation in that apartment, and so on, so on, so on, was very important, top of my mind. And I was really looking for this promotion, for this new job opportunity, for this what color should be my, I don't know, wallpapers be, and that was all really important. But then, yeah, over time, and I achieved all that. It all materialized. It went well. Um, and then it was, on one hand, I was really, really grateful for these things to appear in my life. I was really happy in that apartment. I was kind of thought that I was happy at work. I don't think that way anymore, but I convinced myself that I was happy. But in the end of the day, it all became like normal. It stopped to be a new thing, and all this newness, it weared off, and gradually both apartment and career, they started to bring new problems. Essentially, they became burdens. And yeah, when I moved to Australia, same thing repeated. Like at first, everything was new, and I was eager to understand the Australian way, blah blah blah. And yeah, same thing. Then I got the work of my dreams. I bought a house that I wanted to buy, car, you name it, doesn't matter. But then over time, I just, it was very painful to admit that now that I have this all, I'm unhappy. And it was, for a long time, I was looking away from this question. I just couldn't stand to even think about it because it was so much hope for happiness and all those things, and all those special people. Um, but in the end of the day, it was just kind of average, mediocre, normal, nothing special. And yeah, so now over time, I had to realize, and quite painfully so, that none of the material investments are going to pay off in the currency of happiness. It is just they just don't have it. And nowadays, I think it was a stepping stone for me to realize that. But nowadays, I went even further. I think that the happiness is something that we can see in things if we choose so. But this choosing to see happiness is the work that it makes sense to do. And I'm actually asking Holy Spirit quite frequently to make this work attractive to me. I don't want to stress about it. I don't want to kind of feel guilty that I'm not doing it. I'm just asking, hey, please make it attractive for me. And so that I do it automatically out of being attracted to it. And yeah, so this idea of getting happiness, extracting happiness from things, and I'm not even starting to talk about relationships and family and kids. This is whole other kind of forms, but essentially it is the same. It feels different. Initially, it feels very different because it seems to be kind of a longer term investment than any of the material stuff. You can move houses, you can change jobs, you can change cars, but family stays. But even then, again, newness wears off and it just becomes normal. And over time, I started to notice that the problems just are just the same. And what was even more, I wouldn't say painful, but probably particularly hard for me is to recognize that it is my willingness to see those problems in everything that is the root cause of these problems. Things of themselves are not bad or problematic. It's just my desire to find those problems is what makes those problems manifest for me. And yeah, so this is something I'm still working on, and this was actually a big realization for me. And I think so. Back to this lesson, I just made this example from my personal experience, how it worked for me, and I think now it is the right time to go to the next bullet point. I was mistaken about where it is, the happiness, the salvation. I was mistaken about what it is. I will undertake no more idle seeking. And so, this I will undertake no more idle seeking is a little bit tricky because ego is constantly trying to bring to our attention, oh, this is the new shiny thing. You should have pension savings, you should have holiday house, you should have whatever, and I don't know, cruise for several months every other year. I mean, and so it's nice to understand that I'm no longer seeing the material things as a source of happiness. There are still some areas like money that still have some power over my kind of sense of security, I would say. Money, I know that they don't bring happiness, but lack of money triggers a lot of insecurity in my mind. But certainly, things like cars, families, normal relationships, family, houses, big amounts of money um, is certainly something that I think no longer are as attractive to me. It's just, yeah, like I think about money more like I have to have some kind of safe buffer, then the certain amount. It would be nice if I don't have to work for money, but yeah, I actually like my work, so it's not a that huge of a deal. But then again, from experience, I know that my understanding of certain topics could shift so dramatically over a period of time that it doesn't even matter what I think now. I know that Holy Spirit will just transform it over time. It's just I'm ready for what I'm ready, and I'm grateful for that. And so the main idea here is that I will undertake no more idle seeking, which means I will assign no aspirations of happiness to any external thing because I don't know where to find for happiness and I don't know what happiness is. And so if we accept that I don't understand where happiness is and I don't know what it is, do we have any grounds for making any decisions about how to get to happiness at all? And so, yeah, obvious answer is no. But over time, it so for me, I think it's important also not to deny. It's like I've seen and heard some people are saying that external world is not real, but and I guess it speaks about me at a certain stage. But then I would say external world is not real, but I would still perceive myself as a body. And Jesus says in the course that this is a particularly unworthy type of denial, to deny something that you believe yourself to be. And the proper way out of this situation is to work with the Holy Spirit, and then over time, you wouldn't need, or I wouldn't need, let me put it this way, I just wouldn't, the question will no longer exist if external things matter or not. Uh, they will just not matter. And like, I've heard some, in one of the books, there was a question from the audience, how would I know that my perception of the body dissolved? And the master answered that as soon as you stop asking this question, it has been answered. And yeah, so there will be no question. And I know how this mechanism works, but yeah, there are still a few things that I'm attached to. And I'm not saying it unfortunately, I want to say unfortunately, but it's not unfortunately, it's just stepping stones. I will have to go through the stages anyway. This lifetime, next lifetime, today, this second, doesn't matter. And so, yeah, there is just no point in trying to cut corners or anything like that, or to say, to declare myself enlightened while still thoroughly believing myself to be a body. It just doesn't make sense to me. Only God's plan for salvation will work, and I will rejoice because his plan can never fail. It sounds a little bit theoretical to me, and it sounds like logically it's correct, but it's kind of dry. You know, it doesn't really resonate. And this is exactly what I meant in my previous quote unquote rant about denying the body while still believing in it. This is another example. So I'm asking Holy Spirit to really explain it to me in such a way that makes it really obvious and doesn't require any subsequent explanation. And then I will rejoice, because I will understand without a shadow of a doubt that his plan can never fail. And it is this attitude that really helps me to accept something that I initially have a lot of resistance to accept. And yeah, but over time, I've been through multiple questions like that. It was just a brick wall. I couldn't accept it, and I just asked and asked and asked and asked and asked, and over time, Holy Spirit just helped me to accept it. And yeah, the question resolved, like dissolved. There is no more question if it's true or not. It just, the attitude becomes like, yeah, of course. How else could it be? And so, yeah, this is certainly something that I will look at in the meditation section a little bit later. And so let's have a look at the situational suggested form for applying. Um, so again, these are the forms that Jesus suggests that we may use. It's not the prescriptive form, it's just the general pattern. We can substitute words, we can substitute the entire sentence. I think the important thing is just to leave the attitude and meaning, but we can use the words that we are comfortable with. If we are uncomfortable with these words, or we think that, I sometimes think that the uh, sentence could be just a little bit awkward, then I would substitute something to make it comfortable for me. So, and yeah, so when we read these things, these are the recommended application methods when we see certain situation that is disturbing to us, or we have grievance about it, we're annoyed, we are angry, or whatever. These are the phrases to apply to the situation. Now, God's plan for salvation will save me from my perception of this situation. Interesting. God's plan for salvation will save me from my perception of this. It's interesting, the very idea. So I'm trying to put on like a t-shirt this phrase, and how I would use it in this situation, and what's the essence of it. It's the words in themselves are unimportant. The essence that this sentence is pointing to is important. So God's plan for salvation will save me from my perception. So first of all, I need to be saved from my perception. It is my perception that is the problem, not the situation. And I cannot save myself from my perception. Because if I could, I would do it long ago. I would have done it long ago. And so only I'd probably say, like, for me, it probably worked better that Holy Spirit will save me from my perception of this. Holy Spirit, please help me to change my perception. Holy Spirit, please give me different interpretation of this situation. Holy Spirit, give me your holy vision. Holy Spirit, give me the right perception of this situation, something like that. So the next one, this situation is no exception in God's plan for salvation. Ah, that's an interesting one. So, in the first question, in the first lessons, there is a repeated kind of suggestion to not make any exceptions. And there is a tendency, at least it works for me this way, that it's like I'm a spiritual person, but not with this guy or not with this girl. And yeah, so, or not with my mother, for example, or not with my brother. And it actually dawned on me a long time ago how many exceptions I have. And these days, yeah, I'm actually practice on the hardest ones. And because I'm making no exceptions for the situations that are hardest for me, and everything else is automatically included. And but this is a very good reminder. This is a very good reminder to make no exceptions. And this is also a reminder for me that my only purpose is to be really helpful, and the one who sent me will go there with me, and he will tell me what to say, what to do, to whom, when, how, and so on. I don't have to worry about what to say or what to do. And no situation is exception. It's just, I think, starting from the hardest one is not easy, but it certainly is productive for me, because otherwise the protraction of this exceptionalism that this situation is just too hard. It's just too hard. Um, so yeah, I heard from someone a recommendation to actually start with the hardest situations, because it will not only prove to myself that if I could deal with this, I could deal with anything. It would make it, there will be a lot less temptation to make an exception, because everything else will be just easier. And I certainly notice that this is, let me perceive this situation only in the light of God's plan for salvation. Again, another prayer, another ask. Um, so here we say, I'm willing to see the situation as a stepping stone for me to forgive my need to see it as a problem, or to see anything as a problem. In fact, when we forgive our problems, our enemies, our victimizers, and so on, we're not just forgiving this particular situation, we're forgiving all of them at once. Um, so, yeah, this is a really good one. Let me perceive this only in the light of God's plan for salvation. And then immediately it comes to mind, there's nothing to fear, and I don't have to worry what to do or what to say, because the one who sent me will go there with me. Yeah, it's really nice. Let's move on to the next lesson. This is a very good one. I really like it. 71st. Holding grievances is an attack on God's plan for salvation. Interesting. Holding grievances is an attempt to prove that God's plan for salvation will not work. Yet, only His plan will work. By holding grievances, I am, therefore, excluding my only hope of salvation from my awareness. I would no longer defeat my own best interests in this insane way. I would accept God's plan for salvation and be happy. And we'll talk about the applications a little bit later. So let's once again dig a little bit deeper into the words and try to really extract the meaning from them. So first of all, what does it mean holding grievances? So just terminology clarification. Holding grievances means any type of upset, including anger, rage, annoyance, I don't know, just general bad mood, uh, headache, any bodily condition that you're unhappy with, and anything in general, anything that you're unhappy with. Because this recognition of unhappiness requires us to accept that something is wrong, which is a grievance. And we say that this acceptance of that something is wrong with us, with our lives, which is the same thing, is an attack on God's plan for salvation. Why is it so? The way I see it is recognizing unhappiness requires us to ask for it. So without asking to recognize for the unhappiness, we wouldn't be able to recognize the unhappiness. And so asking for unhappiness is essentially denying God or attacking God. We are kind of trying to block the happiness from our awareness by building walls, by building various types of. Essentially, we are trying to build a huge distraction mechanism, which is called the external world and the body and the space and time and all that. And why is this an attack? Is because if we didn't do that, we will just be united with God. And because we perceive ourselves as separate, it must be an attack because we are actively working against what is natural for us. I guess the choice of word is one thing, but like I think what is really happening here, what is really we are talking about, is that incessant attempt to plot out all the hints of God's existence is what we do. And we are doing that by paying attention of what is not of God. And by recognizing what is not of God, and therefore recognizing illusions. And therefore, by recognizing illusions, we become our self-image must become an illusion itself. Because the perception and the perceiver are one. So, and if we return back to the holding grievances, so recognizing the need to recognize unhappiness is our attempt in illusion to pretend that we are separate from God. Or in other words, God's plan for salvation, which is Holy Spirit, if we recognize unhappiness, we are preventing our own salvation. I guess, or it is the mechanism to prevent the salvation and how we effectively harm ourselves. Well, not harm, nothing real could be hurt or could be threatened, but really it's unnecessary suffering. Uh, there is no real harm because harm does not exist. Harm could only is conceivable in illusion, but yeah. Holding grievances is an attempt to prove that God's plan for salvation will not work. And so we just spoke that holding grievances is an attempt to pretend that we are separate from God. But here we say that it's also an attempt to prove that our salvation is impossible. Every time when we are unhappy, we are trying to prove in illusion that we are a victim, our salvation is impossible, we are stuck with this body, we will die, um, the situation is really bad and we're just trying to make the best of it, best of a bad situation, and there is no hope. So this is what we are actually, this is what we mean when we are recognizing unhappiness or holding grievances. Yet, only His plan will work. So salvation can only come from God. Because as we already spoke in lesson 70, we cannot, being in the ego mind, we cannot figure out what salvation is, where it is, how to find it, what it takes to find it, and we just can't. Like, I think at least living that many years in this lifetime, it's pretty clear to me that I can't do it. And so I have to accept that if there is hope, it should be from God. Because for me, there's no other choice really. And by holding grievances, I'm therefore excluding my only hope of salvation from my awareness. And it's interesting, the choice of words here is interesting. So hope of salvation from my awareness, a hope of salvation in my awareness, or hope of happiness in my awareness. Interesting. And also another thing that I feel like we should talk about here is that by, so this entire context of this lesson, it says that by holding grievances, I'm this, by holding grievances, I'm that. It kind of assumes that we have a choice of holding grievances or not holding grievances. And this is a kind of a big assumption. And I actually want to talk about it a little bit. So this choice for most people is not really a choice. It only becomes a choice when we ask Holy Spirit to make it a choice. So by default, people are just unhappy, or they are happy, or they think that they are happy. So the Course even says that people cannot distinguish between pleasure and pain. Or the other way around. People do distinguish between the pleasure and pain, but they are really the same. You can't find pleasure without also finding pain. So, and this idea of holding grievances, and in grievances we can include both pleasure and pain because they're really the same. One cannot go without the other. You can't have only pleasure and no pain. And here we say that, and so both of them are essentially grievances in this case. And by holding grievances, I'm therefore excluding my only hope. So the sentence assumes that we have a freedom of choice by holding grievances or not holding grievances. Now, I could speak for myself, and for a very long time, it was not an actual choice for me. I would choose, so my ego thoughts would be so prevalent and so kind of, I would choose them by default so frequently that it wouldn't occur to me that I actually could choose not to hold grievances. I could choose not to be upset. I could choose not to be annoyed. Uh, and even if I wasn't annoyed, it was still there. There's always kind of very, very imperceptible amounts of anxiety in the background. And but so it's always there. And by actually practicing just quietness, meditation, and exercises for sure, lessons, it helped me tremendously to develop this peace. So when I am in peace, which happens quite frequently these days, I'm sufficiently kind of separate from my grievances, anxieties, insecurities, and so on, that I could actually see them. Because when I'm always in anxiety, I can't see it. It's like water and fish. So fish couldn't tell you what water is. It's just natural environment. It is only by being in peace for kind of enough time that I started to see the moment when I choose grievances and how the whole mechanism works. So for me, it turned out that this is a huge, huge machine of distraction for me. It distracts me from peace. But to be able to see it and to be able to make this choice, for this choice to be real, when you actually make a decision to ask a advice from the Holy Spirit or from the ego, these are only two sources that you could pick from. Um, these, for it to be a real choice, it requires a little bit of practice, that you have enough quietness and enough peace to actually see it as a choice, because otherwise anxiety is just there and I couldn't even see it. So that's the most annoying thing, that it was just there and it would never go away, and I would think, oh, when I don't feel strong anxiety, I'm just peaceful, right? But yeah, it was not so, of course. So by practicing silence and peace, by actively asking Holy Spirit to give me peace, it is only then when uh, these not holding grievances became a real option for me. And I think this is important to notice. So I did not realize it for a long time, and it might actually help you for me to pay attention to this moment, that you may recognize it in yourselves as well. And so I'm therefore excluding my only hope of salvation from my awareness. Quite a bold statement. And so by holding grievances, again, asterisk comment, footnote, that provided that this is a real choice for you, or for me, I am therefore excluding my only hope of salvation from my awareness. It's not that I'm killing the salvation, I'm making the salvation impossible for me. I'm just pretending that I'm not seeing. Salvation is still there. It's still here all the time. It doesn't go away anywhere. It is always accessible. It is just our choice to, our ability to choose it can be somewhat limited. And this is, I think, well, it was definitely very helpful development for me. And again, uh, I could not have figured it out myself. Absolutely impossible. I am not good enough for figuring this stuff out. So it was Holy Spirit who was leading me all this time. I would no longer defeat my own best interests in this insane way. And so, if salvation is is always present and always available, why would I choose not to take it? Yeah, this is a rhetoric question, of course, but it's just a reminder. I think it's the reaction to this question is so obvious that it, it's not even worth asking. But it's not a question really. So according to the course, it's actually a statement. Uh, but yeah, I would no longer. I would, if I had choice, real choice, I would no longer defeat my own best interest. I would accept God's plan for salvation and be happy. This is such a bold promise. Let's move on to the applications. So I'm choosing between misperception and salvation as I look on this situation. So again, it's practicing choice. Potentially in the middle of the storm, but it never really. If you're already in the storm, you will not be able. So you already chose. It is not the right time to make the choice. The right time to make the choice is before the storm, and yeah, over time you will automatically start to catch yourself early, and you will have this split second when you have a choice to go into the storm or to stop and do something else. I remember when I started seeing these decision points, I would frequently still choose to go into the storm, but I was extremely grateful that I at least go in there, maybe not super consciously, but I actually realized what I'm doing. Because previously it just happened. I'm all of a sudden in the middle of the storm. It never happened, and now it happened again. Like this type of problem. But yeah, so seeing these points of making decision is actually really helpful. I'm not saying that I acted on them from the first attempt or 100th attempt, but over time I started to use them more productively. And it just takes practice. I found practicing in advance, in a kind of peacetime, not wartime. Uh, yeah, I would just practice making this choice in advance in my mind. And then I would find it a lot easier to apply this pre rehearsed decision in real life and real situation. if I see grounds for grievances in this situation, I will not see the grounds for my salvation. Interesting. So if I'm upset, I won't see forgiveness opportunity. Or as Gary Renard puts it, just another forgiveness opportunity, Jaffa. Uh, but it's really important. Well, it's really important. It's so ego statement. Over time, I started to see that I can really forgive everything. It's not always happens on the spot right now, but that's the, I guess, the end game, when I could forgive everything on the spot and not uh, be angry or upset about anything at all, because I would forgive it so quickly that there will be no need to get angry or upset. And so here we are really stating that if I am acting on grievances scenario, I could not act on forgiveness scenario, and vice versa. If I'm acting on forgiveness resolution, I could not hold grievances. So they are mutually exclusive. And this is interesting. I certainly noticed in my conversations with other people that I am upset a lot less, just becomes more neutral. The situation just happened, right? What can I do? This is in my power. This is not in my power. I will do what's in my power. I will ask for advice from the Holy Spirit. And if I have guidance and I recognize it, I will just act on it. Uh, if not, if I will not recognize, if I will, sometimes it happens, if I will judge it as not appropriate or I'm not ready for this, uh, happens, I will not act on it. And yeah, because again, um denying something that you believe in is particular unworthy type of denial. This situation calls for salvation, not attack. Or I would probably, being practical, substitute salvation here for forgiveness, because forgiveness just is very specific, concrete, visceral experience for me. Salvation is a little bit, I guess, fluffy. I don't really um, get this. So for me, it's just a word. Doesn't mean much. So yeah, it's interesting. So this situation calls for forgiveness, not attack. I certainly noticed that I started to do this a lot more frequently than I used to. And interestingly, the experience is that you just, in the situation when you would previously get angry or, uh, you know, express ironic opinions, and which is a passive aggressive type of attack, it just doesn't happen. You just look at, okay, so this is the situation. What is the outcome that I want out of it? What are the steps I could take? And yeah, I'm just taking it without skipping this entire drama altogether. It just doesn't cross my mind. I'm just right in the kind of resolution mode, so to speak. So yeah, this situation calls for forgiveness, not attack. Very good. And now let's, yeah, standard note on resistance. things like of that nature, especially lesson 70, when nothing in the external world could bring you happiness, could bring a lot of resistance. Do not get upset about it. This is your opportunity for forgiveness. And I certainly would suggest, if you are in the mood to do forgiveness, to do it on the spot. Just ask Holy Spirit to give you another point of view, happy point of view, quiet point of view, kind point of view, generous point of view, abundant point of view. And listen. And yeah, see what happens. Works for me, that's for sure. And yeah, so for me, forgiveness these days, it's just, sure, I know what, sorry, forgiveness, resistance. So for me, resistance is just, sure, I mean, it's just there. If it wasn't there, I wouldn't need the course. And this is the whole point. So the whole point of the course is forgiveness and Holy Spirit. So Jesus just, for the lessons are designed in such a way so that they cover large areas, large groups of questions that typically need forgiveness. And yeah, so forgiveness just comes up. I keep saying forgiveness. Resistance just comes up, and the right reaction to this is just to apply forgiveness. Just, Holy Spirit, give me another point of view. Give me your point of view. Give me loving point of view. Give me peaceful point of view on this question. And something like, I have no interest in holding grievances about this. I know that it will not bring me happiness. And yeah, just ask for help and it will come. It sounds easy and it is, but yeah, it takes practice to actually, for it to become easy, it takes practice. But yeah, it's achievable. No big deal. Alrighty, so I'm pausing for now. I'm doing 10 minutes meditation, and we'll see you in 10 minutes. Welcome back. I guess it was a interesting, very instructive meditation for me, where all of this we are talking that it makes no sense to invest into external things for anything really, and holding grievances is just another investment. And not only I had major distractions in the meditation, which gradually dissolved because I maintained my decision to stick with quietness. But, and also, yeah, the when we consider things like that, ego will scream. It just will. And that's not a problem, because we can always reach for quietness inside of us, and ego cannot do anything about it. It is not a decision making entity in this situation, or any situation really. It's us who choose to side with ego. But back to meditation. And this these images of, I don't know, bodies or cars or, I don't know, work achievements, I was just, my mind was bombarded, meaning I'm saying as if I'm being a victim here. It's not like that. I automatically drew from ego's arsenal many things like that. Ego presented me with a lot of images. I just I looked at them, I paid some attention, but then I remembered that, well, it's not the right time and place, and then that's fine. I can let them go for now. And then it became really quiet. And then uh, I felt really strong peace. And for me, the feeling of peace is really boundless, and I'm almost losing the sense of body. And then, after a little bit of a peaceful state, they started um, to rise the sense of joy. When these things happen, I don't know where it comes from. And I don't know what's the source of this joy. What I'm joyful about, I have no idea. But the feeling is real. And yeah, for me, it's just another exercise of making the right decision, really. So yeah, that's me. Hopefully, it's helpful to you too, somehow. And yeah, let's do another thing, which is the lesson itself. So let me switch the presentations. Yeah, before we start. So 10 slides, they will switch automatically once a minute. There's a slide number, you can track if you need to. And so these are essentially the same slides that we went through. Uh, Feel free to concentrate on everything that makes sense for you. For myself, I work with the second part of the slides. For me, this exercise, I'm trying to apply to the relationships in my life. I have a couple of people with whom my relationships are, yeah, as I said, are hardest. And I just apply everything to them. And I noticed that with everyone else, it just becomes easier automatically. And so, yeah, let's start. You'll figure it out. And see you in 10 minutes. I will mute myself as well. All righty. So, yeah, it was an interesting lesson. I guess it was for the first time when um, I had a real experience of not attacking um, the people who I use for my relationship training in these lessons. It's interesting that initially there was so I started to remember the situation that I usually was upset about. And I was kind of expecting the anger to rise up as it usually does. But then I started to read the suggested phrases and I started to really apply the suggested phrases to the situations. And initially, it was a very strange experience, like something's not matching. I used to look at this person, this situation, and see bad stuff. Like they're mean to me, they're attacking me, they're whatever. But I didn't feel that at all. So I did this expectation, but what I actually felt didn't match this at all. It was some weird mixture of excitement, surprise, being a little bit bewildered by unusual reaction, but there wasn't. Maybe there was a slight hint of the anger in the beginning, but by the middle of the exercise, there was something different. I just couldn't see the anger anymore. I couldn't find it. What I could find is my desire to see the situation and people in the situation as the opportunities for forgiveness and actually doing the forgiveness was so strong that I wasn't able to see my previous reaction at all. And I ended up with in a pretty unusual but exciting mood. Like, oh, I could actually look at these people without anger. This is weird, but this is also very exciting because that's the whole point. And yeah, I still find my mood somewhat strange in a good way. Um, yeah, so I think it's a proper breakthrough actually, if I think about it. And certainly it fits the definition of the miracle. All right, that's it for today. So see you next time. Till next time. Bye for now.